Hello everyone, I'm Jeff Hampton with the Hampton Law Firm. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Today I want to talk to you about drug charges. Maybe you've been charged with drugs and possessing drugs, or maybe actually dealing the drugs in the state of Texas, and you need to figure out, what type of defenses do I have? Where do I stand? What's my next move? Appreciate you joining us. If you wait around till the end of this video, I'll also give you a free ebook, What to Do If You've Been Charged with a Drug Crime in Texas. Okay, now listen, here's the thing. Drug charges in the state of Texas are a little scary because unlike some other states out there, you name it, Colorado, you can go to California, you can go to New York. There are many other places in our country where you're not going to be charged quite as punitively, and the penalties and punishments are nowhere near as severe as what you'll find here in the state of Texas. So it's important to get out in front of it and know where you stand and understand the seriousness of your charges if you have been arrested for this type of offense. So one of the things we look at in Texas, drugs are categorized into 6 groups based on their addictive properties and their medicinal value. These penalties for possession of these items, they range based upon the type of drug, number one, and the amount, the actual weight of the drug. So the seriousness of possession is based upon what kind of drug you got and how heavy is it, how much of the substance is there. Now I'm going to be frank with you, sometimes it's not fair, okay? If you have THC oil, that is going to be treated more seriously and you're going to be punished more severely for that than you are if you just have regular old marijuana, all right? The same thing with different types. Let's say you put here's the one that always drives me crazy. Let's say you put that THC oil into a pan of brownies, okay? Or maybe you put it into gummies. Now, the state of Texas gets to weigh the entire pan of brownies or the entire thing of gummies that you have. Well, you say, what is brownies? Flour, sugar. Yeah, they get to weigh all of that. The law says they can include not only the drug, but adulterants and dilutants. Now, what would normally maybe not even be much of a felony can be a first-degree felony. I represented somebody over in the Arlington, Texas area. She was a college student. She put a little bit of THC in a pan of brownies. She ended up getting charged with a first-degree felony because they weighed everything, okay? So that's the way the law works in Texas. Sounds kind of crazy, but that's the way it works until it changes. So one of the things we look at, you can understand there's a wide range based upon those variables, all right? So one of the things we need to look at from the very beginning is what classifies these 4 different categories I mentioned, what are they? And what's classified as a serious drug crime or not as serious of a drug crime? One of the first things we look at is there are 4 schedule groups that you will find when you're talking about a possession of a controlled substance. Now, marijuana is kind of in its own little category, so we won't talk about that for this moment. When you start talking about very serious drugs, I'm going to go through them with you for a moment. Schedule 1 drugs include heroin, LSD, methamphetamine, kind of the big ones, right? Cocaine. Those are the Schedule 1 drugs, right? Schedule 1 is heroin, LSD, and then we can name some other ones that are on there. Schedule 2 include Percocet, which is weird. Some of these it's not all just illegal drugs. You can actually possess certain prescription drugs, and if you don't have a valid prescription, it's still illegal, okay? Schedule 2, cocaine, opium, Percocet. Schedule 3, ketamine, Vicodin, anabolic steroids. Those are Schedule 3 drugs. Schedule 4 drugs, Xanax, Valium, and then there's more down the list that are not as common. Schedule 5 drugs are cough suppressants with codeine. Literally, there are certain types of other treatments I won't get into that are more specific, that if you do not have a prescription for it, it's illegal. You can be charged with a felony. So each and every one of these is broken down under the federal guidelines. The federal guidelines list certain drugs that they believe are either more addictive or can cause more damage to the public, and as a result of those, they grade those drugs, okay, just so that you understand where we're at. Here's another one. You say, well, what if I didn't have any drugs, but I had something, I had what's called paraphernalia? Well, any equipment used to conceal, prepare, manufacture, inhale, or inject illegal drugs is prohibited under Texas law. Some types of equipment, what do I mean by that? Baggies, syringes, papers, bongs, all that stuff. Those are considered paraphernalia. Now, that is only a Class C citation under Texas law, but please understand, it can still get you arrested. The police very frequently they find paraphernalia, they arrest someone, and they search everybody else or search everything else that's nearby to try to find more serious illegal substances, okay? Now, drug manufacturing charges, I'm moving very quickly through this real quick. If you're actually manufacturing the drugs, that can include everything from marijuana cultivation. We found someone we represented that was growing marijuana in his father's backyard, and his dad didn't even know about it, okay? Well, that's growing marijuana in your backyard, and it's against the law. You're not allowed to do it in Texas. Also, there's methamphetamine labs and other means by which to manufacture or produce illegal drugs. Then we get into people say, well, I'm wrongfully accused. I didn't do anything wrong. Well, understand, common scenarios in which that happens is, and one of the examples I can think of here is maybe you live in a home with a friend or a relative and they had drugs and you didn't know anything about it, but there was a raid on your place, okay? Well, that's an example of that. Maybe you're renting out a room to someone who's manufacturing drugs, or you've temporarily been residing or visiting someone who's manufacturing drugs. Here's one that was real big. We had a client that we represented who got a package delivered to their door from someone from California that was full of illegal drugs, and they were waiting for them to grab the package and bring it into their house and open it up, and they were arrested, even though they didn't even know what it was, right? So these are the kind of things that can happen if you're not careful. So drug manufacturing is very serious. In fact, it's a felony crime that, depending upon the charge and the circumstances, can carry with it a range of punishment up to life in prison, depending upon the substance. So what I want to do very quickly is go through this. Instead of going through some of the penalties that we look at, let's talk for a few minutes about some of the actual defenses. Number one, here's some common defenses to possession of controlled substances and illegal drugs in Texas. What about lack of probable cause or lack of a search warrant? So here's one of the most common defenses that we use in drug crime charges. If you are not currently, some people say, well, I'm not even facing the charge, it's my family member. It's important to know what these rules are, because if the police don't have a warrant to search and they seize drugs, it's not coming into evidence, okay? So generally, in order to conduct a search of someone's person, someone's vehicle, or someone's location, like their home, there must be a warrant. And so if they don't have a warrant, the police officer must have independent probable cause in order to do that. For example, let's say you're pulled over in a routine traffic stop, okay? The police cannot search your car unless you, number one, tell them to. There's no reason to give them consent. If you give them consent, it cures all. They can search everything they want, okay? But if you don't, they have to have an independent reason to just start digging through your car. All right. If you appear intoxicated, or maybe you're doing what they call furtive movements, or it smells like marijuana in the car, that can give them independent probable cause to be able to search your vehicle. Otherwise, if they just start kind of barreling in there and they start searching your vehicle without your consent, that may be an illegal search under the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Okay. Now, what about your home? What if someone comes to your home and they ask to come in and take a look at your home? You can always deny them the consent to come into your home and to search. And if you deny them that consent, they must have a viable, valid search warrant signed by a judge. And even if the judge signed it, there's something that comes with that search warrant called an affidavit, a search warrant affidavit. Your criminal defense attorney needs to tear apart that affidavit, because the search warrant itself doesn't really mean a whole lot. It's that affidavit. It lists the facts. Was it based upon a confidential informant? What information do these police officers have that really give them probable cause to enter into your home? Because I don't care if a judge signed it or not. If in court it's determined that that information was not reliable, it's an invalid search warrant, and all of that was seized in your home will be excluded from any potential evidentiary value at all. In other words, your case could be thrown out, okay? So that's one of the most important things to examine. Now, here's another one. What if you had no intent to possess the drugs? And what do we mean by that? Well, the state of Texas must prove that you intentionally or knowingly exercised care, custody, or control over the drugs. And some people say, well, I didn't mean to do it. I know this sounds kind of goofy, but we have had people admit to this. This is my brother's coat. It's not mine. I'm wearing it. I didn't know there were drugs in my pocket. Or here's another one. I'm borrowing my uncle's car. I had no idea there were drugs under the passenger seat. That we've seen that happen multiple times, okay? Well, if that's the situation, the state of Texas, you may be exercising care, custody, or control over those drugs, I mean, it's there with you. It's within your wingspan. But if you didn't know about it, it's not a crime, okay? They have to prove you had intent, criminal intent to do so. So one of the things that we say is, as well is, what about this common scenario? We represented somebody one time who was in the back seat as a passenger in a car, and there were 4 people in the car. Now imagine this. He got a ride. The guy who owns the car is driving. There's a passenger in the front seat. The police pull them over, get them all out of the car. They find drugs under the passenger seat and in the center console of the vehicle. They shake everybody down. They try to make everybody blame someone for who did it. Our client's arrested. Here's the deal. He had no idea it was there, but more importantly, who actually exercised possession? Who exercised care, custody, or control? He was just there. He had no idea, and it wasn't even near him. So they must be able to prove that they don't have to prove ownership, but they must prove that you actually exercised control over those drugs for them to be able to sustain a conviction, all right? Now, here's another one very, very quickly. What if it's not the drug in question? We've actually had people that the police seized the item. They did a presumptive test, and it appeared to be a particular type of drug. It goes to the lab, and it's not that drug. Well, now that charge can either be lowered to a lesser charge, potentially, or it may be thrown out altogether if it's not an illegal substance, okay? Finally, let's say the issue comes up where the drugs went missing. We had a case where literally the drugs just went missing. If your case goes to a trial, the actual drugs that were seized must be available for testing and be able to be submitted. If that happens, that's a valid defense for you. And then the last one I'm going to talk about almost never happens, but I bet I get asked about it multiple times a month. Jeff, I was entrapped. The officer entrapped me. It was never my fault. Well, let me just clear this up for you. There are only 2 good components of an entrapment defense, okay? Number 1, there must be inducement. Number 2, there must be predisposition. So the police must have used coercion or persuasion to convince you to commit the crime, literally, okay? That's known as inducement. And then not only that, they must also prove that you were predisposed to commit the crime, that you, in other words, you were willing and able to do so. Now, if that happens in your case, you may have a valid defense. Now, I'm just going to say this. If you're facing a felony drug charge, you need to get in touch with an experienced and aggressive criminal defense attorney so that this issue can be brought before a grand jury so that potentially your case can be at no bill before that grand jury. And if you have a case in the North Texas area, I want to invite you to call our office at the Hampton Law Firm at 817-877-5200. We'd be happy to give you a free case analysis and a free consultation. And by the way, if you waited around, which you did here till the end of this video, I encourage you to click on the link below. I'll give you a free ebook, What to Do If You've Been Charged with a Crime in Texas. Thanks again for joining us today. We'll see you on our next video series.